Most executive presence advice creates imposter syndrome because of two crucial missing factors. To make this really simple, imagine you want to have more money. Now, what's the easiest, fastest way for you to get more money? It would be to go to your neighbor, the nearest person, and take their wallet, take their purse. Now, what's the problem with this? You know it's not ethical. So while you've achieved your goal, you have more money, you now are more insecure. You have a level of anxiety, justified anxiety, because you have to look over your shoulder that you're going to get caught, you're going to suffer the consequences, the justifiable consequences. And this is exactly what executive presence tactics and techniques do without the two crucial parts that are usually missing from most advice. So let's get into what are these two crucial pillars. Typical executive presence focuses around gravitas, communication, appearance. And there's nothing wrong with those three pillars per se. In fact, they're actually good. They are really strong fundamentals to improve your executive presence and communication. But where they go wrong brings us to the first one, which is a focus on tactics, a focus on surface level appearances versus underlying identity transformation. And just like in the example of wanting more money and doing the easiest, fastest thing to do it, executive presence thought of as pausing, posture, tonality, this is the equivalent of just skipping to getting the money, taking the shortcut, and not actually earning the presence internally. And so not focusing identity, which granted is more challenging, it's slower, it takes time to actually develop your character or give yourself permission for the character you should have, because that's another element of executive presence is maybe you should be in that room. You've earned that leadership position, but you're not giving yourself credit to be there. That is going to create this gap between how you're presenting yourself and who you think you are. And that gap creates that imposter syndrome, that feeling of anxiety, that feeling of pressure, that feeling of, I don't belong here. Okay, and so executive presence tactics focused on posturing, appearance, what you say versus what is genuinely authentic to you. And I know that word authenticity gets thrown around a lot, but there's a way to actually speak so that you're being authentic and also present your ideas in a way that other people appreciate and respect the way you present yourself. Those are tactics to learn, but those are not generally what's taught when you just YouTube videos and find coaches and consultants teaching executive presence. It's usually marketed as, hey, here's the easier fix. And just like with taking money that doesn't belong to you, you haven't earned it, the easier fix is going to cause underlying problems, i.e. imposter syndrome, which leads to number two. And the second crucial missing factor of most executive presence is the orientation of who you're focused on. So when you're focused on these three pillars of gravitas, communication, appearance, who are you doing it for? Are you doing it for your boss, your CEO, the board, your team, your colleagues? Is the focus on other people, basically anyone but yourself, and you have other people on a pedestal and you're doing this so they approve of you? Or is your focus on the truth and your ability to discern the truth, to identify the truth, and to speak about it clearly and accurately? These are very different orientations. And the first, as you might have already surmised, will lead to a lot of anxiety and internal negative emotions because you don't control how other people think, how other people act, how other people respond to you. You can take certain actions to influence it, but what's the best way to influence that other than speaking the truth in a certain way, right? In a presentable way. But someone might be having a bad week. Your boss might be having a bad week, a bad month. Maybe they're going through a divorce and it's a bad 2 years. I mean, people have a lot of emotions and sometimes they act based on those emotions. You don't have control over either one of those situations. What you do have control over is your ability to identify what's real and what's true. And when you focus on that, one, you trust yourself. So this imposter syndrome doesn't emerge because you're not impostoring. You're not pretending to be something else. So when you factor in these two crucial elements of executive presence, the focus on your own underlying identity to make sure it's aligned with how you're presenting yourself, as well as who you're presenting yourself for. Someone else, trying to impress someone else, trying to appear a certain way, or the truth and your ability to see the truth. Now you're focusing on the deeper underlying character of who you are. And this eliminates the feeling of imposter syndrome because you're actually focused on what's real for you. That gap between who you're presenting yourself as and who you know to be is eliminated. It's the same. You're presenting yourself as who you really are. Now, you want to be tactful in certain situations. You want to use certain communication styles that are more readily received by your colleagues and by the people that you work with to earn collaboration. But it's not because of them. It's for you, right? It's in your self-interest and it's aligned with who you are. Essentially, what you're doing between aligning how you present yourself and who you really are, it's an act of integrity. And when you know you're being of integrity, there's no imposter syndrome. I mean, by definition, there's no imposter. You are aligned with who you are. So remember, if you're focused on tactics, on the easy shortcut ways of having an executive presence without doing the deeper identity work, then gravitas becomes posturing, and communication becomes manipulation, and appearance becomes a mask. And being the successful person that you are, you'll know on some level that this is not true, that this is not who you are. And so make your gravitas, your communication, and your appearance based on who you really are. Make it an act of integrity.